Before Good Will Hunting became synonymous with the iconic phrase, "How do you like them apples?" it was a quiet exploration of genius, vulnerability, and the human connection. In this video, we'll delve into the rich layers of this cinematic gem, examining the transformational journey of its characters, the power of mentorship, and the enduring impact of authenticity. Join us as we retrace the steps of Will, Sean, and the South Boston backdrop that shaped their destinies in Good Will Hunting.
The film revolves around a 20-year-old orphan, Will Hunting, who works as a janitor at Massachusetts Institute of Technology. He is a self-taught genius who is on parole. Will spends his free time with his friends Chucky, Billy, and Morgan. One day, a professor named Gerald teaches his class mathematics. At the end of the lecture, he challenges his students to solve a difficult mathematical problem he put on the board outside his class. Whoever completes the problem will get his name written on the university's top achievers list. His students try to solve the problem, but none of them can solve it.
Will walks by the hallway where the problem is written on the board.
Will returns to his home and tries to solve the mathematical problem on his bathroom mirror. The next day, he secretly solves the problem on the board and leaves. Meanwhile, Professor Gerald is informed about the mathematical problem being secretly solved. So he questions his topper students, but they deny solving the problem as it is very difficult for them. One day, Will attends a children's baseball match with his friends when suddenly he notices a bully who used to beat him in childhood. Later, Will spots the bully on his way and decides to beat him up. As his friends try to stop him, suddenly, police arrive, and Will resists them. As a result, he is arrested for assault. At his next lecture, Professor Gerald notices that his class has expanded dramatically because everyone wants to see who the math genius is. But no one comes forward when the professor asks for the secret math genius who solved the problem. So, the professor tells his students that he has written another math problem on the board, which took his faculty 2 years to solve. The professor has made this strategy to find the math genius by putting on a challenge. That day, when Will cleans the empty hallways, he comes across the math problem and starts solving it. However, Professor Gerald spots Will writing on his board and suspects that he is doing graffiti. Will runs away as soon as he spots the professor. Later, when the professor looks at the board, he realizes that Will is the genius who solved the math problem that took him 2 years to solve. That night, Will goes to a bar and gets the attention of a girl named Skylar. She gets fazed when Will narrates history facts effortlessly to a bully who insults his friend Chucky. Skylar gives Will her number, and he promises to meet her for coffee someday. Unfortunately, the next day, Will gets to his case hearing and gets convicted of assault. Meanwhile, Professor Gerald collects information about Will and discovers that Will got the job as part of his parole employment program. Gerald rushes to the court hearing and negotiates with the judge to release Will on 2 conditions. Firstly, he needs to take mathematics classes with the professor. Secondly, he needs to go to counseling sessions regularly. At first, Will rejects the professor's offer, but agrees later because he has no other way to escape prison. The next day, Will joins the professor for math lessons and surprises him with his immense knowledge of mathematical concepts. Professor Gerald then takes Will to a famous therapist, but Will mocks and makes the therapist uncomfortable. As a result, the therapist refuses to see Will anymore. Similarly, Will goes to 5 therapists individually, but they all refuse to give him therapy.
Professor Gerald contacts his old friend Dr. Sean, who teaches psychology at a community college. At first, Sean refuses weekly sessions, but Gerald convinces him. In the first session, Will tries to irritate Sean by insulting him and making fun of his book collection. But Sean keeps his composure and does not get defensive or ask personal questions from Will. Additionally, Will notices a painting by Dr. Sean and mocks him with the false assumption that his wife must be disloyal. This enrages Dr. Sean, and he grabs Will by the throat with a warning to never insult his wife again. The session ends, and Will proudly leaves, thinking he succeeded in breaking another therapist. But luckily, Sean asks the professor to ensure Will attends his weekly sessions.
After his therapy session, Will goes on a date with Skylar and realizes she is a very rich and smart girl. They both have a good time and even share a kiss. A few days later, Will calls her from a public telephone but hangs up suddenly as Will is not used to relationships and managing his emotions. Will then goes to his second therapy session.
Sean takes him to the Charles River. Sean informs Will that his comments about painting don't upset Sean anymore because Will is just a kid who doesn't know anything. He even informs Will about the death of his wife from cancer. Sean states that Will needs to change, otherwise he will never be able to enjoy the love and intimacy of a partner.
After the session, Will returns to construction work with his friend Chucky. In his third session,
Will and Sean stay quiet the whole session and don't even say a word. Sean doesn't force Will to talk about his personal life. Professor gets annoyed when he finds out about the quiet session, but Sean assures him that he will handle it his way.
Will keeps doing mathematical sessions with the professor, who keeps showing Will's talent to his colleagues, who are surprised by his intelligence. During the fourth therapy session,
Will and Sean get more comfortable with each other
as they joke around and talk freely.
Will informs Sean
that he didn't go out again with Skylar or call her because he fears she might turn out boring.
But Sean assures Will
that relationships are built on intimacy and bonding, not with perfection. At the end of the session, Will is amazed that time has passed so soon, and he didn't even realize that. Encouraged by the session, Will meets Skylar, who refuses to go out with him because she has to work on a difficult assignment. Will leaves but soon returns with the problem solved on a napkin. They then watch a dog racing game together, and Skylar questions Will about his family. He lies to her about his family. Instead of telling her he is an orphan, he lies that he has 12 siblings. Skylar then forces Will to meet with his family and friends, so he takes her out to meet his friends, and they all have a good time. At his fifth therapy session,
Will and Sean discuss how Sean proposed to his wife by rejecting a baseball match ticket to meet her. Will learn in these sessions to take chances in life and not regret anything. The next day, Sean meets up with Professor Gerald, who forces Sean to manipulate Will into choosing his future profession. But Sean refuses to force Will for a job interview. The conversation turns bitter, and Gerald informs Sean that he already set up an interview for Will.
However, Will doesn't want to get this job, so he sends Chucky impersonating Will and rejects the job offer. A few days pass, and Skylar asks Will to move with her to California for her medical school, but Will gets triggered and refuses to go with her. She realizes that he has abandonment issues and tries to comfort him, but Will gets defensive and starts acting rudely. He informs Skylar that he is an orphan without a family and has been abused by his foster families. He fears Skylar will leave him, so he breaks up with her, and she cries hysterically. Will gets broken after the breakup, and his emotional turmoil makes him more irritable. He goes to a job interview arranged by Gerald, but mocks the interviewers and leaves.
Sean asks Will about the most important person at his next therapy session, and he says Chucky. But Sean assures Will that he needs a soulmate and Will mocks him for not moving on after his wife. Sean questions Will about what he wants to achieve, but Will states that he wants to stay as a construction worker in Boston. Now Sean mocks Will for being a coward and not leaving his comfort zone. An irritable Will replies that he wants to be a shepherd, but Sean asks him to leave and encourages him to decide about his future.
Before leaving Boston, Skylar calls Will for the last time to say goodbye and confesses her love, but Will doesn't say it back as he is afraid of heartbreak. Later, Will meets with Chucky and informs him about his breakup with Skylar a week ago. Chucky asks Will about his future, and Will states that he wants to stay in this neighborhood, working as a construction worker. But Chucky gets upset and informs Will that he wishes that Will achieve something in his life and doesn't want him to be miserable like them. Will is further surprised that Chucky wants him out of this neighborhood to some faraway place without informing them. Professor Gerald gets upset the next day when he realizes Will didn't attend his session.
He scolds Sean for not pressuring Will to utilize his potential. But Sean doesn't approve of forcing Will and wants him to decide his own fate. Gerald gets upset and shouts at Sean for being a failure and jealous of Gerald. Will hears this conversation from the door and enters the office while Gerald leaves. Will notices that Sean has his file and abuse pictures and questions whether he has seen anything like this before. Surprisingly, Sean replies that he has been abused as well by his alcoholic father and states that abuse isn't the fault of the victim. He keeps stating that it's not your fault repeatedly and Will breaks down and hugs Sean. Finally, the last therapy session is over, with Will finally getting over his past and ready to start a job offered by the professor. Dr. Sean announces that he will travel the world for self-exploration. Additionally, Will asks Sean if they can keep seeing each other.
A few days pass, and Will gets a 21st birthday gift, a car by Chucky.
He goes to meet Dr. Sean and notices that he is packing for his journey, so Will leaves a note. When Sean checks the note, it states that Will is about to go and see his girl.
When Chucky arrives to pick up Will, he is happy to find out that Will has finally left. The final scene shows Will driving to California to meet Skylar. Good Will Hunting, released in 1997, directed by Gus Van Sant, produced on a budget of approximately $10 million. The film earned Robin Williams his only Oscar, winning for Best Supporting Actor. The movie itself was nominated for 9 Academy Awards in total. Matt Damon began writing it as an assignment for an English class at Harvard. Ben Affleck and Damon then transformed it into a full screenplay. This film remains a touching portrayal of intelligence, friendship, love, and personal growth, and has maintained its popularity over the years. Please subscribe for more videos like this. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you at the next recap.